Ya estamos para compartir con todos ustedes una entrevista exclusiva. Está Caro Amoroso, está Nelson Castro. Les agradecemos muchísimo que nos acompañen. Sé que viniste corriendo, Nelson, de la radio. Bienvenido. Hola, Caro.
¿Cómo estamos?
¿Cómo están?
Bien,
nuestros dos periodistas que han estado en territorio ucraniano, en esta cobertura impresionante que hizo Todo Noticias, y con una nota exclusiva, ¿no?
Sí, se trata del ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Ucrania, Dmytro Kuleba, una de, te diría, las personas más importantes dentro del gabinete de Volodymyr Zelensky, uno de los hombres de la hora también, Nelson, a la hora de hablar de las negociaciones o de ese intento de negociaciones con la Federación Rusa, digo, negociaciones que han sido por demás infructuosas, ¿no?
Lamentablemente, con definiciones muy importantes que dio, estuvo muy concreto en la entrevista,
sí.
Que fue además un gran logro de producción de Gonzalo Báñez,
de Gonzalo Báñez de TN Internacional.
Con títulos que van a dar la vuelta al mundo, ¿sí?
Imagina un escenario de continuidad de esta guerra mucho más largo del que se esperaba, ¿no? Porque en un momento se había hablado de que iba a ser una invasión rápida. Y sin embargo han pasado más de 2 meses y algunos creen que esto puede durar mucho tiempo más.
Iban a ser 3 días, después el 6 de marzo y estamos a fin de abril, ¿no?
Bueno, 3 días porque no fueron, porque la resistencia ucraniana fue lo que fue, y en relación a este escenario del que vos hablás, Franco, nosotros le preguntamos si Ucrania está lista justamente para este escenario de guerra prolongada que puede durar meses y hasta años.
De tercera guerra mundial, como ya definen. El otro día estaba Jorge Castro acá y decía, estamos sin lugar a dudas ante una tercera guerra mundial, algo que había dicho Putin antes, pero bueno, dicho por un analista internacional, parece como una mirada más objetiva. No sé si tuvieron oportunidad de hablar con el canciller sobre esta mirada.
Mira, él lo compartió cuando él dijo, viste, lo van a escuchar, seguramente después en la nota entera, cuando él dijo, si Rusia, digamos, triunfa acá, después siguen con otros países. Así que es efectivamente esa mirada, y hay un elemento, hay una internacionalización del conflicto muy clara,
bueno,
¿no?
claro.
Vamos a compartirlo, sí, el testimonio entonces, la entrevista con el canciller de Ucrania en exclusiva para TN.
I would like to start off by asking you, what is the current state of the negotiations with the Russian Federation?
Well, as the battle in Donbass, the Russian offensive in Donbass is underway, Russia leaves very little space for negotiations. However, we remain open to continue our discussions, and video conferences at the level of experts of both delegations, they take place every 2 days. But they discuss minor details. No big talks are taking place. We are ready to engage in them, but as I said, Russia is conducting a large-scale offensive in Donbass.
What's the main issue about the negotiation over the Donbass? I mean, are you negotiating peace or also the retreat of the Russian troops?
It goes without saying that Russian troops must leave Ukrainian territory. This is not even a point for negotiations. This is one of the starting points of Ukrainian position. There are no compromises that we will be making about that. The talks in principle are focused on the following issues. First, the end of the war and the circumstances or the conditions that have to be met for the withdrawal of Russian forces. Second, what will be the future of relations between Ukraine and Russia? Of course, Russia has its own demands. We have our own vision and proposals. The difference is this: Russia approaches these talks with ultimatums. We insist that we will only agree to mutually acceptable solutions.
Minister, what are the findings of the Ukrainian government regarding war crimes perpetrated in Ukrainian territory? And can you give us an estimation of casualties, both civilian and military, for Ukraine?
Russian atrocities committed in Ukraine since the beginning of the war are the darkest page of this conflict. We lose soldiers every day. We lose civilians every day. Every day, Russian army destroys houses, sometimes entire villages, and this causes a lot of pain. But this pain is incomparable to the suffering that we are going through because of the atrocities committed by Russian army. Only around Kiev, in towns and villages around Kiev, we found 1,085 bodies of civilians who had been deliberately tortured and killed. We learned what the word mass grave means, because the Russians were putting the civilians that they had killed in mass graves. Many of them were found with their hands tied behind their backs, and they were shot in the head. So it was not an accident, it was a deliberate murder. But take Mariupol, the city that we have no access to, the city that has been destroyed by 95%. It was, before the war, it was a city of 500,000 people. And it's unimaginable even to estimate how many civilians had been killed, tortured, raped in this city by the Russian army.
Do you think that in the future, regardless of the result of the war, Putin is going to be prosecuted due to those crimes?
Ukraine wants to set up an ad hoc, a special tribunal to prosecute the crime of aggression committed by the Russian leadership. We do it because the International Criminal Court has no jurisdiction to try the crime of aggression. The rest of crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of genocide will be tried by the International Criminal Court. International justice takes time, but I have no doubts that in the end we will bring to responsibility not only the perpetrators of these crimes, soldiers and officers, but also their commanders and those who had given orders to them, up to the leadership of Russia. They have to bear responsibility for throwing the world into the nightmare of the Second World War when mass civilians killings occurred.
Do you feel that the world, and particularly some countries in Europe, are not being severe enough with the Russian Federation?
I believe that the world should respond to Russia with the same level of severity as Russia acts towards the world. If Russia crosses all the red lines and violates all rules of international behavior, then the world should reciprocate, should equally respond to it. So far, the response of the world has been much stronger compared to 2014, when Russia illegally occupied Crimea in Ukraine. And we appreciate all of these efforts. But of course, as long as the war goes on, these efforts are not enough. So we do not complain because we see a lot of action being taken, but this effort must not stop until we stop Putin.
Is the Ukrainian resistance ready for a war that may last many months or even years ahead?
We have no choice. This war will last until Ukraine wins. As simple as that, whatever it takes. And the reason why I'm saying this is very simple. You should understand, and your viewers should understand one thing. If Ukraine loses, there will be no Ukraine. This is as simple as that. And therefore, we will fight.
This is a very important point you have just made. So the Ukrainian goal is the absolute withdrawal of the Russian troops from the whole territory of Ukraine.
Absolutely. We are in a state of an open war with an aggressor, with the country that moved its forces into Ukraine. Now, at this point, we insist categorically that Russian army must withdraw to the positions held before 24th of February. This was the day when Russia attacked Ukraine. The longer this war continues, the more unpredictable the dynamic of the front line becomes. We remain absolutely committed to finding a peaceful solution and to negotiating a solution. But as my president said on a number of occasions, we will not concede a single inch of our territory.
Is a retaliation on Russian territory absolutely off the table for Ukraine?
We are not aggressors, unlike Russia. We do not conquer others' territories. We want to stick with what we have. We want to stick to our land, and we will retaliate politically, economically, and legally. Politically, by isolating Russia on the global arena. Economically, by imposing more and more sanctions on Russia so that their war machine will be deprived of the inflow of money. And legally, by prosecuting Russian war criminals for all the atrocities committed in Ukraine. We are not Russia. We think in different terms. We do not need anyone else's land. We have enough of our Ukrainian land, but we will not allow anyone to take it away from us.
Minister, were you surprised that the Russian regime accused the Ukrainian government of belonging to a Nazi ideology?
Listen, Russian propaganda has been building the image of Ukrainians being neo-Nazi for years. And it's true that millions of Russians believe that Russian army went to Ukraine to find and destroy neo-Nazism. The problem is that Russian army is in Ukraine, but they cannot find neither neo-Nazism nor neo-fascism nor any other phenomena of that kind in Ukraine. To the contrary, Russian army in Ukraine behaves exactly the way as the Nazi army behaved during the Second World War in the territory of Ukraine. And it's not us who committed an act of aggression against a sovereign neighbor. It was Russia, in exactly the same way as Germany, as Nazi Germany did in the late 30s, early 40s. So by calling us neo-Nazi, in fact, it strikes back because Russia behaves like neo-Nazi. We do not have, unlike even some Western European countries, we do not have far-right ideology as a mainstream ideology in our country. And my president is a Jew. He's of Jewish origin. So how can you have a neo-Nazi country with a president of Jewish origin?